money, big prizes. I love it.
Imagine this, bright studio lights, an overexcited crowd screaming at the top of their lungs, and you, the poor contestant, thrown into a deadly arena with nothing but a machine gun and your wits. You're surrounded by enemies on all sides, explosion going off all around you, and the prize? Not just cold hard cash, but microwaves, VCRs, sports cars, and maybe even a trip to Hawaii. Okay, no trip to Hawaii, but you get the picture. The catch? You have to survive a never-ending hailstorm of bullets, bombs, and bloodthirsty maniacs to get it. This game is Smash TV. When it hit arcades in 1990, Smash TV wasn't just another shooter, it was a full-on adrenaline rush with a wicked sense of humor. Kind of think of it as part Robotron 2084, part The Running Man, with a dash of Mad Max and RoboCop thrown in. And it took the twin-stick shooter format to new heights, wrapped it in a parody of violent game shows and consumer culture, and cranked the difficulty up so high that it could make grown men cry. And broke while they feed the arcade's quarter slots all day long. Today we're going to deep dive into the making of Smash TV. We're going to explore its gameplay, and as usual, compare its home console ports and see why it's still one of the most beloved and brutal arcade games ever made. This is the story of Smash TV. Now, the early 1990s was a unique time in gaming history. The NES was still selling strong, the Sega Genesis was on the rise, and the Super Nintendo was just about to launch. But in arcades, what was the culture like? Well, things were getting pretty wild. Now, fighting games like Street Fighter II or Mortal Kombat would soon dominate, but they weren't here just quite yet. But right before that fighting game boom, the arcade floor was packed with shooters, beat-em-ups, and sports titles. Players came for the fast action and high scores, but they stayed for games that could truly challenge them. And that's where Williams Electronics came in. Williams was an arcade powerhouse through the 1980s, famous for titles like Defender in 1981, and this being one of the most difficult shooters of all time. And in my opinion, definitely was innovative with its control scheme. Then we had other games like Robotron 2084, which came out in 1982, and this was a twin-stick shooter that inspired countless games. Now when I say twin-stick, what I'm talking about is the control scheme it had. It had two sticks that you move simultaneously that would control the game. And then you had other games like Joust that Williams was famous for, and this was a multiplayer classic with unique physics, and also had a very unique control scheme. Now Williams wanted something new for the decade, something that could capture the chaotic magic of Robotron, but with a more modern style. Bigger explosions and a theme that would grab players' attentions immediately. And that's where this twisted idea of a futuristic game show contestants fought to the death was born. Now two names were key in bringing Smash TV to life, Eugene Jarvis and Mark Turmel. Now Eugene Jarvis was already an arcade legend at the time. He co-created Defender and Robotron 2084, two of the most intense arcade shooters ever made. His specialty, you ask? Designing games that didn't just challenge players, they overwhelmed them with enemies, forcing fast reflexes and precise control. And then you got Mark Turmel, who was a younger designer with a flair for over-the-top high-energy arcade gameplay. He loved pop culture, humor, and he loved pushing technology to its limits. And together, they came up with a pitch. Take the pure chaos of Robotron, wrap it in a violent, satirical version of The Running Man and American Gladiators, and then sprinkle in absurd consumer prizes like VCRs, toasters, and sports cars, and the cherry on top, make the announcer loud, ridiculous, and slightly unhinged at times.
Big money, big prizes. I love it.
The game's world was set in 1999, which in the 90s felt like a dangerous future and forever to get here. In this world, society had gotten so addicted to violent entertainment that Smash TV became the #1 show in America. Contestants fought for their lives while millions at home tuned in, laughing and cheering. Definitely big inspiration from The Running Man. From the start, Smash TV was designed to be fast, funny, and overwhelming. Everything arcade players loved at the time. So let's go ahead and jump into gameplay. Now at its heart, Smash TV was all about the twin-stick control system. And this was revolutionary for the 90s. One joystick moved your character and the other aimed and fired your weapon in any of the 8 directions. It meant you could run one way while shooting another. A must when dozens of enemies came at you from all sides. The game was divided into square rooms connected by doorways. And inside of each room, enemies poured in from every direction. You fought to survive while collecting prizes, power-ups, and cash. And when you cleared the room, you chose a doorway that led to another chamber, sometimes giving you branching paths, which I thought at the time was very intuitive. And some of the enemies came in all forms. You had fast-moving thugs, slow-moving thugs, armed soldiers, giant snakes, tanks, mutants, drones, and then they even had bosses, and they were big, loud, and designed to eat your credits. First up, you had Mutoid Man, and he was a massive cyborg with tank treads, human arms, and a grotesque human head. He was the poster child for Smash TV. Then you had Scarface, and this guy was cool because he kind of reminded me of Sinistar, if you ever played that old game, another Williams classic. And then you had Copperhead, which was just cool. It was a monstrous snake that basically was two snakes that lunged across the screen. And I mean, and all the bosses, in my opinion, looked super cool and detailed. And to top it off, each boss had multiple phases, and each phase meant more projectiles, more hazards, and a greater chance of death. And then the game even broke out with a little humor, and that came from the absurd prizes scattered across the floor. You had bundles of cash, of course, brand new VCRs, because back in the day, VCR was a big thing back then. Now you can't even find one, but back in the day, VCR was the stuff. Microwaves, sports cars, and exotic vacations. And while the game's announcer shouted catchphrases like, "Big money, big prizes, I love it, I'd buy that for $1," and then that came directly from RoboCop. It was part of the comedy, chaos, and culture, and that made this thing a complete package of 100% quarter-eaten machine. You're gonna spend some money if you wanna beat this game. Now, as far as the graphics on this game, the art style was cartoonishly violent. When enemies were hit, they exploded into gory chunks, or meat showers if you will, as fans called them. And the bosses they had were kind of grotesque in some ways, yet they were funny and they had charm and character, blending the 80s action movie absurdity with sci-fi horror. And the sound design for this game was equally over the top. The machine gun fire, the voices inside the game, the explosions. But the true star in this game that's most memorable in my opinion is the announcer's voice. A sarcastic game show host who mocked you, encouraged you, and celebrated your fabulous prizes. And the music kept things fast-paced, using short loops that increased the tension. Every sound reinforced the idea that this wasn't just a fight, it was also entertainment for a bloodthirsty audience. I mean, this game delivered on everything. I mean, it was loud, it had bright colors, it had great bosses, and at the time, back in the days, the cartoon, at least in the 80s for me anyway as a kid, the movies were larger than life back then. Not like today where movies are just kind of like, to my opinion, but back then movies were huge and you had big inspirations like action movies like, and they took a big theme from the Running Man in this game, which to me was a great movie. I mean, just the whole idea of a game show for prizes. I remember one of my best parts, the movie had so many cool scenes. They had other game shows like Climbing for Dollars when guys climbing up, the Dobermans are down there and the guy shoots him in the face and he's trying to hold on to all his money. Just the idea of the bad guys they had in the Running Man with Sub-Zero and Dynamo and Fireball. They just had cool ideas in the 80s, and this game to me heavily inspired by it, kind of took it to that next level. So yeah, definitely an awesome game, a hard game. I mean, it's just designed just to take your money, and it had 2-player, which made it really cool. It was a loud game. I remember seeing this game at Aladdin's Castle. Just it was like, and it was such, because you could just hear the game. You could hear this game over the other games with the announcer shouting out that famous phrase, "Big money, big prizes, I love it." You know, and just a host of other things he said. "Good luck, you're gonna need it." I mean, he just had a bunch of cool stuff. So you could hear that thing shouting over, and then just the graphics with the when you shoot the enemies that explode, and it didn't have any slowdown really. The game kept pace with just what was going on. So it's basically, it kind of played like a shmup in some ways because you had to kind of dodge around, and the control scheme just made it like larger than life. I felt like it was just a big deal playing that game back in the day. But it did have a lot of ports, and we're gonna go over those real quick. It had quite a few ports to the home console. Now, one of the things I will go into it where we look at all the ports, and I did miss a couple. I'm sorry. I got what I could though. And I did play through these games thoroughly just to kind of compare all the versions. So I'll give you my comparisons of way in them as we look at the different versions of the game. But I will say this, to be fair, to give all the ports a fair shake, the control scheme at the time was so advanced that it was hard to translate that. Unless you had a controller with multiple buttons or a PC, it was kind of hard to get that moving. But some of the ports did do pretty well, and we'll address that when we go through. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the ports of this beautiful game. And to be fair, just to kind of give you a comparison with the games, contrast, we will take a look at Mutoid Man pretty much on every port, so we can kind of get a gauge of what the boss would look like and his size compared to the guys on the screen. So let's go ahead and hop into it. All right, first up, we got the arcade, and that's the one we've been looking at the whole time. And this one is obviously the best way to play this game. I feel like it gives you everything you want. It gives you kind of almost like bullet hell in some ways with all the stuff flying around the screen. It's multiple ways you can play it. You can kind of run around the screen, and that's the beautiful thing about this game. There's not really one way to play it. I mean, you can kind of just be one of those guys that scroll the screen going in a circle. You can hold down the middle and kind of fire left, right, up and down. And so it's a lot of different strategies to play this game. Some people are just experts at it. I mean, I play it okay, but I feel like this one gave you everything. And this is the game we're going to compare all the other ports following. So first up, we have one of the more familiar ones, the NES version. And I feel like the NES version, to me, did for what it was, I mean, for what it tried to do, it did a really good job. I mean, it included the hallways that you walk down. It did have the music. The music got old really fast on the NES because it was loud. You know how NES 8-bit music was. It was pretty loud. And this one was very pronounced in this game. And by the way, Acclaim kind of brought a lot of these ports over, and Acclaim did a really good job here. So now, out of all the control schemes for the consoles, I feel like the NES had a pretty good control scheme. You could have one button to push forward, one button to shoot forward and lock you in, and the other button would randomly shoot around the screen. As far as, and that's the most important part where we look at these ports, are how well you can control your shots, and you have to have a balance. And that's one thing that we're going to see in some of the other ports. The balance is completely broken with the enemies moving. They either move too fast or they're very erratic. And but the NES, I think it had a nice tone. It's playable. You can actually get to the end if you're good enough. And it carried over a lot of stuff from the arcade, like the rooms you could get, the different paths you could take. And so I feel like this one was a pretty good port for what it was. The NES version, to me, played pretty good. I feel like it kept the core of the game there. The only thing I could say with it is obviously the graphics doesn't have the power to make those graphics. But if I bought this one, I remember I didn't play this one on the NES. I played it on the Super NES. So before going back and playing this one here, I feel like if I would have bought it back in the day, I don't feel like I would have been disappointed with the game. I mean, it would have been what I expected for an NES version of Smash TV. So overall, pretty good port here for the NES. So next up, got the Amstrad version of the game, and this one's a PC version. And I don't know about it. This one, it's Smash TV, but and this is the intro where it kind of looks like Doom in some ways, the intro, because the lady's like holding on to his leg, and I don't know about that. I don't know if that's kind of like what Smash TV was going for. You kind of came into the arena as a arena contestant, not so much women grabbing onto you like you're a savior. So it kind of threw me off here. But in the game itself, I don't know. They keep some of the Smash TV elements, like some of the power-ups and weapons you get, but you don't get that hallway like you got with the NES version or the arcade. When you travel to another room, you just kind of appear in the room. And the game moves way too fast. I mean, if you got the enemies, they move erratically, and the game's way too fast for what it does. And for some reason for here, I don't know if it was just a glitch with the game version I played, but it seemed like you were invincible. It seems like I'm getting hit by stuff, but I'm still not dying. I don't know if that was just a setting they had when I played it, but yeah, I just booted up and played it, and it seemed like I couldn't die, which was kind of crazy. I don't know if it's an oversight or just some settings, but yeah, anyway, but as far as the gameplay goes, it tried to put everything in there, but you see right here, you got those snakes coming down, and things are definitely out of order. Like, these snakes don't come until way later on into the game, but here they are in this first area. And then we get to Mutoid Man. I mean, he looks kind of weird. I mean, you can tell it's him, but the way the guys at the bottom, they're on the bottom of the tanks, they're not there. And on the tank treads, the little guys are there that start initially, and it's just kind of weird, the whole game. So overall with this version, I'd say it's Smash TV-ish, but at the same time, it just, yeah, it's just kind of too different from the other games. The other games kind of keep that core of Smash TV. This one kind of just goes off the rails. Fun game. It's just the challenge factor. I don't know. You really can't die in the game. At least I didn't die in it, so I don't know what was going on with that. But overall, I don't know. Yeah, not one of the better versions of Smash TV. There's definitely better ways to play. Now, I won't say it's the worst though, because you do get some pretty bad ones moving forward. So next up, we got the Amiga, and the Amiga sounds pretty good. The Amiga is actually a pretty good port. The only problem that hurts the Amiga, if you're playing with the controller, is the buttons aren't really that great. I mean, you can lock in kind of like, it plays similar to where the NES plays. Obviously, it looks a lot better, but the game does move kind of slow. And this will come back and haunt us later, because while the game moves slow, the first round start off fine. You're able to play through when the green guys come out with the clubs. They're okay, but as the game goes on later, these red guys, if you can see right here, and they're chasing me around the screen, they're actually faster than me at times, and then they're not consistent. Sometimes they'll go slow like they're supposed to, then they'll just speed up all of a sudden, and you really can't outrun these guys. And what sucks is you really don't have a way to shoot behind you like the other ports offer you with dual setups, because usually the way it goes is one button for the game. And a lot of the ports are one kind of, when you're moving, it's kind of hard to explain, but when you move backwards, basically you shoot opposite the way you move backwards, if that makes any sense. When you move backwards, you'll automatically turn backwards if you push one of the buttons, and if you want to lock in a certain position, you can push the main button, hold the other button, hold it down. I know that's confusing, but this game, for me, didn't offer that. So you kind of have to shoot everything in front of you. It's kind of hard to turn around and shoot backwards while you're walking backwards if you're playing with the controller. So the difficulty in this one is pretty high. And once so many things get on the screen, it's kind of hard to navigate, because like I said, the game is kind of slow and you move kind of slow. But overall, I feel like with better controls, this port's not bad. And I think the pacing, if they can just tone the pacing down in this game, it wouldn't be too bad. So overall, a decent port for the Amiga, just probably one of the more harder versions. So next up, we got the Master System version, and this is probably the worst version of Smash TV that I've played anyway. And I mean, well, yeah, it's probably better than probably worse than the Amstrad as well. At least the Amstrad, as bad as it is. I mean, I wouldn't know if you could die in that game. So, but whatever. Just going by what I'm looking at here, this game is pretty much unplayable for the simple fact that the controls are really bad on this game, and it kind of adopts that control I was talking about earlier with the two buttons. One button moves you around and shoots in all directions. The other button kind of locks you in. While it has that, the pacing on this game is way off. I mean, the enemies are super hard. They zoom in. The only strategy I can kind of figure out with this game, you'll see here, is I go up in the corner and kind of just post in the corner and push one of the buttons, and it kind of covers that area for me. And when somebody comes beneath, I just push down. That's the only way. Otherwise, you will get out. The characters are faster than you, like way faster than you in the game. They're very erratic. There's no consistency the way they move. They're just kind of all over the place, and this game is hard. You're going to get a couple of continues and you're out of there. So yeah, this is probably one of the worst versions of Smash TV. But then again, it is a Sega Master System in 1990, so I will give it a little reprieve for that. But outside of that, yeah, this is probably one of the worst ways to play Smash TV. Moving forward, we got the Genesis up next, and the Genesis makes big improvements. And the Genesis pacing slows the game down. The graphics are really decent on this game. Not the best looking version of it for the home consoles, but in my opinion, pretty decent. I mean, you got the, like you said, you can see the overlay of the fixtures in the roof where the cameras hang down from, and the big lights and everything. And believe it or not, what's also pretty cool about what I should have mentioned, a lot of the games, the versions talk. Like with the NES version, pretty cool with that. Kudos for having voice samples in there. Same thing with this one, sounds pretty good. Also, the Amiga had some pretty good sounds. Now, graphically, this one doesn't look as good as the Super NES in my opinion, but it is still a pretty decent port of the game for the Sega Genesis. This one could be challenging as well. Not as hard as the Master System version, but definitely pretty challenging. And graphically, the game does everything it's supposed to. It keeps the core of the game for a Sega Genesis. For a Sega Genesis game, pretty good port, but not the best you can get on the home console. And lastly, we'll take a look at the Super NES version, and this is, in my opinion, hands down, the definitive way to play this game at home. I was super impressed when I played this game back in the day. I remember I played the arcade first, and then when I played this one, I was super impressed with how I feel like they took the arcade and slapped it almost perfectly on the Super NES. Now there are some differences, like they did cut out a lot of the blood. If you know in the arcade, if you kill the monsters, especially we'll just take Mutoid Man for example. when he dies, when you go through his phases, there's a lot of blood where his head comes off and everything. In this version, they kind of cut that blood out, but it still looks beautiful. I mean, because, you know, NES, or, you know, the Super NES back then was still on that whole censorship kick, and they wouldn't learn their lesson until Mortal Kombat 2 would roll around. So, but in this era, they were actually still making games where they were kind of being family friendly. So, but overall, I feel like they put the music in, the voice samples sound amazing in this game. Pretty much everything from the arcade is here. And what makes the Super Nintendo one so great is with the extra buttons it had, you were able to like move around and shoot in all 8 directions with ease, moving forward or backwards. So what gave this another edge was the fact that this one had a great control scheme over the other systems. But so overall, the Super NES did a heck of a job getting this one translated and ported over. I mean, definitely the definitive way, if you're gonna play Smash TV at home, this is definitely the way to go. So big ups to Nintendo, and this is one of the times where the Super Nintendo and the Genesis had a port of a game, and this is one of the times, in my opinion, where I feel like the Super NES won out in this exchange. Not always, but you can go back and forth, but this time, Super Nintendo came out on top. So what kind of legacy did Smash TV leave behind? I mean, Smash TV did more to make money. I mean, it influenced the entire twin-stick shooter genre. And later games like Geometry Wars, Robotron X, Dead Nation, Nex Machina, they owe their existence to this design. I mean, it also paved the way for Total Carnage in 1992, a semi-sequel by the same team. And while not as iconic, didn't get the love that Smash TV got, it carried the same humor and over-the-top action. And even decades later, I mean, true fans of the game, they still quote the announcer. They still recognize, Mutoid Man. That's like I said, in my opinion, the face of Smash TV. And they still appreciate the blend of satire and gameplay that this had. Modern indie games regularly pay tribute to Smash TV's style, proving this formula is timeless in my opinion. So what I think about Smash TV? Smash TV was just, it's a classic. At the time when it came out, like I said earlier, it was just the culture of the 80s was bleeding over into the 90s. This came out in 1990, so it was kind of bleeding over to that. And I feel like it captured 80s action so well. And I have to say, definitely huge inspiration from The Running Man. I had to feel like that's where they got the main idea from. But it wasn't like a ripoff of The Running Man. It was actually inspired, but kind of brought its own flair and flavor with its own, with the bosses, with the announcer. I mean, this was a game at the time for basically, if you were an adrenaline junkie, this game did it. And it took tons of quarters to beat. For me anyway, it took a lot of quarters to beat this game. This is one of the ones you beat one time and you just kind of like, okay, I'm done. You get one of those specials you put into the arcade, the change machine, get $5 worth of tokens, or maybe $6 if you got a cool arcade like that, and you're going to spend that whole thing pretty much playing this game. But you don't want to stop because it's just addictive gameplay. So I mean, hats off for Smash TV, and it would go on with like I say, tons of console ports. I mean, pretty much it landed on every platform that they had at home, and it inspired so many other games to come after that. So now, to be honest, to be fair, you really don't see a whole lot of Smash TV today. But if you're an arcade enthusiast and you can nab one of these Smash TV cabinets, ooh, kudos to you, my friend. That is definitely a find in the wild. They can be pretty expensive as well because it's just a cool game, and with the twin stick controllers, it's kind of hard to emulate that to get the full effect on a console. So yeah, you definitely the arcade. If you ever see this one in an arcade out in the wild, give it a playthrough. Get you about $5 to $10 in quarters. Give it a playthrough, and it's probably a one-time thing, but you owe that to yourself. This is definitely a great game. So now with that, guys, let me know your experiences with Smash TV. If you've never played the game before, definitely, because MAME, I will say MAME does a really good job emulating it. You can actually use twin sticks. It's not the same as holding them, but you can use the twin thumbsticks if you're playing with a modern controller for MAME, and actually get a very good experience. Close as you can get to the arcade, you can actually get a pretty good experience with that. So try it out on MAME and save yourself some money too. Yeah, you'll definitely have a fun and a good experience, especially if you play with a buddy. If you're interested in some of the versions of this game, I have it on my other channel. Just so you know, guys, if you're interested in like a review of some of the ports I play on this game for this channel, I actually put those over on my other channel, Rude Tuna's Retro Reviews. I will leave that link in the comments, pinned in the comments. I'm putting them over there now, so feel free to check those out. And if you're interested in more modern games, I'm working on a few there. You can look at Rude Tuna's Gaming Adventures. I'll put that in the comments as well. I did move Dino Crisis over to that channel because I felt like that game is more deeper into like adventure and story. So games like that with a deeper lore and story like that, I'll put over there because they're not really arcade games. So if you're interested in that, you can check that over there. I know it was here at one time, but I moved it because I felt like it's probably needs to be on a different channel. So it's not gone, just on a different channel. So with that, guys, as always, take care of yourself, protect your inner peace. God bless you. I'm gonna catch you next video. Thanks for watching.